Hi everyone, welcome. We're just going to take another minute or two to let everyone log on and then we'll officially kick it off here in about a minute. So go ahead and get comfortable and then Todd and Melissa will take it away. Looks like we still have
sips in.
Yeah, last sips of coffee.
That's right.
A few more people are joining here. Okay, well, we'll just go ahead and get started. My name is Mackenzie and I'm on the marketing team here at Velosio. I wanted to welcome you all today and kick off today's webinar with a couple of notes. So first of all, the webinar is From Tradition to Technology. Also wanted to thank Todd and Melissa for coming on. They have a lot of great things to share with us. So at the end, we'll have a Q&A. Keep your questions, pop them in the chat. We'll go through that. You're also being recorded today, so everyone is muted, but we'll be sending out this information at the end. And with that, I will let Todd and Melissa introduce themselves.
Thanks, Mackenzie. Greetings and good morning. Well, good afternoon for some of us. Thanks for joining us today. We're gonna have conversations around ideas and share stories of taking businesses from tradition to technology. My name is Melissa Herbst. I'm an industry account executive here at Velosio. I've been here for over 10 years, helping clients make decisions on technology, and over the past 6 years, working exclusively with growers in the horticulture market. So pleasure to be here today. Thank you for joining us. And we also have Todd Waterman. Todd, if you want to introduce yourself.
Sure. I'm Todd Waterman. I'm a pre-sales solution engineer here at Velosio. I've been here for about 6 years, and I was in the industry for about 18 years at a liner producer. So I feel your pain, and we're excited about what we're going to show you today.
Thanks, Todd. So as we get started today, we wanted to poll the crowd. And so what we're curious about is, what does your operation struggle with the most? Is it production, knowing what needs to be produced and when? Is it purchasing, knowing what needs to be purchased and when? Is it availability, knowing what is available to sell? Or costing, understanding my costs? I guess I should have given you another option, which would have been other.
All of the above.
Right,
all of the above,
right.
It looks like production is really pulling away here at about 86%. Cost
Wow.
is also seeming to be a problem, but yeah, production is easily our winner here. We have about 50 people or 50% voted, so we'll just take another second here.
Very good.
Yeah, it looks like our winner is easily production here, coming in at 89%.
Awesome. Thanks everyone.
I think that makes sense. Yeah. It all really comes from that, right? If you don't know what to produce and when, you're not going to really know what to purchase.
Mm-hmm.
That has to do with availability, and that all comes down to the costs in the end. So that does make a lot of sense.
Great. Thank you. So today, really, our format is almost going to be conversational and really sharing some experiences that we've had with our community and growers. What we see from a tradition side, we'll call it, and really where they've gone and what's possible with technology. So our first story that we'll share really is related to, we called it mobile sales. So we're working with a client. So this was an ornamental big box grower. And what they were struggling with, they kind of came to us with a myriad of issues that they were looking at, finance, purchasing, production, distribution. And when we worked with them, really what the leading problem was supporting product replenishment for each store. So at the time, they had salespeople who would visit the stores to assess inventory, and then they would request product. And on the back office, they needed to share what was available, what was coming in and when, what was ready to ship now. They also wanted to make sure that the available product was allocated properly for that store so they didn't overstock, because the way that their sales team was incented at the time was by sales, not necessarily by cost. So if that item had a better chance to sell at another store, then the back office really wanted to try to manage that. And so, the tradition in this case was a lot of phone calls and a lot of spreadsheets. So the back office had this spreadsheet. They were working out of QuickBooks. POs were not in a system. And so they used a spreadsheet to really say, what are all of those purchase orders that I've done? The supplier, the item, the quantity, the UPC and the store UPC. And there was a different spreadsheet for the different product type. And then they also had kind of like an ordering worksheet to try to figure out where they wanted to send this product and what they wanted to make available for each of the sales people and their related stores. So there was just a lot of conversations to make any kind of shipment happen. So that was really what ended up bubbling to the top as the biggest struggle for this organization. And so we really spent a lot of time with them to really say, okay, if enabling that sales team to better see and request product, what can we do here? And Todd, do you want to jump in and kind of explain in the end what?
Yeah, sure. This is one of my favorite stories because, as Melissa said, they do such a good job. They have a ton of stores. They keep getting more stores because they're doing such a good job, but it's such a major feat every day to really, they had to do, create these spreadsheets of what available. Like Melissa said, they didn't want one salesman to take all of the inventory, right? Because they would want to. So besides figuring out what's available, counting every day, then they segmented the inventory basically and split it up by salesperson. So what we did, they were using QuickBooks at the time, and they were looking at Business Central and our product, but the biggest bottleneck was this mobile, mobile sales, because their product has a really long shelf life. So they actually go into the store to view the inventory and figure out what to order. Well, what we did is we created a Power App for them. And so this is the back end of the Power App where they actually upload all of their inventory and their products, and they're able to do basically what they were doing in a spreadsheet, segmenting it by stores and all that stuff, all happen inside of the app. And then if you want to switch screens here, the next shows the actual app. So this is what they would take into the store. And so they are able to, use this app, see what the inventory is and different information about it, and actually create the orders inside of the app. Then jump to the next one. This is paged into the app. Look, we even got little pictures of the product and that. And so they build their orders. So what's so great about this too is because, like we said, this was their biggest bottleneck. So we fixed this first. So they used the app, and then we actually, the back end of the app, like you saw a couple prior slides, really captured all of the different sales orders. And then we actually pushed that information into QuickBooks. So they didn't have to re-enter. So we used what's called the Power Automate to do that. And then now they're on Business Central now. So that we fixed that first. Now they're on Business Central, so they really do have live inventory in that. And so the app now pulls the information from Business Central. So they're not creating this spreadsheet every day. So I think it's a really great example of the different ways that you can handle this. You don't always have to go full ERP first. Maybe there's something else we can help with, fix that, and then move on to the bigger issues.
Awesome. Thanks, Todd. All right. The next story we want to share really came from a customer interview. And so this customer is live in Business Central. And what they were saying, one of the things that has stood out to them is support. And so their tradition and what they were used to is they had been in an industry-focused system. And what the struggle was is if there was an issue, they had to submit a help ticket and wait for someone to help us. And so and if there was a change that was needed, it would take even longer. So when they're in this kind of industry-focused solution, you know, there wasn't a lot of help that was available to them. They were very much reliant on just that one publisher in that case. And then when we move to technology, you know, what's the from tradition to technology, you know, this is what the client would say is that, you know, there's a ton of resources out there for you to help yourself. So this client said there's a Learn Dynamics channel that this individual watches every day now, especially working on planning. He said the solution was really easy to use and learn. And he said the good news is that if there is any problem you come across in Business Central, someone has already figured it out. And there's likely a how-to video explaining how to fix it or address it, which is just a couple clicks away. And very often this individual will have BC on one screen and the Microsoft Help Portal on another, step by step. So certainly as they're learning and getting used to the system in the first year or so, it's great that there are tools available for you to help yourself. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think I lived that for 18 years. You know, I had the industry. It was a okay system, but it was very proprietary. You know, but there's no information online. Anytime we had any question, you know, we could get an update and there's new functionality. You know, I got a call. You got to have them train you, teach you about it. Then later, you had to do like what you mentioned. You know, a support ticket rather than call. You know, so you're really just at their mercy. And what I just love about Business Central is that, you know, it is a Microsoft platform. With our SilverLeaf add-on, it adds more functionality for the horticulture industry, but it is all built around the standard Business Central processes. So just for example here, you can see they're highlighted in yellow. I went to a search engine here and said how to in Business Central, and we have, what is it, 498 million results. So, and those are all videos. So like Melissa said, there's so much help out there for you. And it's not that we want to abandon you and not help, but we want to enable you to really help yourself. And so maybe you do send in that ticket to, you know, the request, but then you can also continue to try to figure this out on your own. And then there's another shot in here, the Dynamics 365 Business Central portal, where you at the bottom there, you can see your path to get started, and there's endless training videos. You know, this is free. So yeah, I can't say enough about this coming from something with, you know, only support by one group, right, to something where you have this vast open frontier of information. Here, go ahead.
And the other aspect too is the active user group communities. You know, not only is there available information at your fingertips, there's also really engaged user group communities. So this is just a snapshot of the Dynamics user groups that are available. So also you can talk to organizations similar to you who are using this technology and even get in front of people for live conferences or virtual conferences. So lots of resources available. Todd, are we ready to go to our next story, do you think?
I think so.
All right, let's do it. All right, so the next one we've got more. This is probably a little bit longer, but from tradition to technology, we're going to talk about costing and pricing.
Big topic.
Big topic. So the example we've brought forward here is an ornamental tree and shrub grower. When they first came to us, costing was big on their list. So understanding costs for production of trees was a challenge because the data was dispersed across different systems and spreadsheets. So calculating the cost of production per tree really required an understanding of not only the starter plant material, but also labor, nutrients, and additional expenses. And having that information in real time was a priority for this team. And not only was understanding costing important, but also understanding like how are we priced. So tree and shrub pricing is really determined kind of by a few things, what the market will bear, but also, you know, you need to look at your profitability. You know, what are your costs to produce these varieties, and am I charging enough to cover that cost? And what they learned is that many times, like ultimately a big impact to the bottom line was if you can identify, say, your low performing SKUs, get rid of those low performing SKUs. And before they had the tools in place, it was really difficult for them to determine who were the low performing items. And so I would say here, you know, for this client, and we've seen this a number of times, is there's an armada of spreadsheets to really help track costs and determine pricing. these are some comments from the client, like afterwards, he said the team has a much better understanding of costing by trees for trees and shrubs and can determine the correct pricing models as well as the varietals that are profitable. They can also determine what trees and shrubs are available to sell after the growing cycle and can account for things like an increase in fertilizer pricing. So this client was definitely impacted by what's going on in Ukraine. A lot of their fertilizer supply came from there. So that's kind of a summary of some of the comments. And then we also are going to share kind of some of those tools that we have and can make available for clients here. So Todd, you want to?
Yeah, I think, it's funny. I worked at a nursery for 18 years and we never really knew our cost. I think it's not that easy of a problem, really. Especially we were all tribal knowledge. A lot of the information really wasn't in the system. We had a system that was able to do some of that, but it's garbage in, garbage out. If you don't really build your products in a system that you can keep up with, in that if production's not in the same system, it's really almost impossible to really come up with a cost. And the closest we ever got, we realized one of our most popular products, we were losing about 3 cents on every tray we sold. So, it can be very eye-opening. Your best-selling item doesn't necessarily mean you're making the most money on that. So just a little screenshot of one of our items in here, just a petunia example. But you can see I got the costing of FIFO here, so that's first in, first out. We are able to do any of the costing, whether it's FIFO or standard, average, all the above, basically. And then because the product's built inside of Business Central, you can switch to that next slide there. If I drill into this product and look at what we call the cost shares, you can see the complete rolled up total cost. Over there to the right in yellow, it's like $3.35 it cost us to produce one of these items. But if you really look at this whole hierarchy here, right from the top, we got our Petunia Easy Wave Red 4-inch. That's what we're growing. And then underneath it, what's also in bold is a plug, Petunia Easy Wave Red, because we grow our own plugs. So those two are bold because those are the two production orders. So we have the top level finished item. We need a production order to grow the input. But also then as you go down, you can see we need a seed, need a 288 cell tray. Then even we have the steps of the growing, of going in the germ chamber, and the grow phase, spacing, and so on. And then you can see tag and some other costs in there. So you can see got boxes around, we have a rolled up material cost, and then we have a rolled up capacity cost. Capacity is more of the growing, and then capacity overhead as well, because on each of these steps, like for instance, the germ chamber, you're able to put what your overhead costs, indirect costs are for that step or process. And so that is all built into the rolled up cost. So this was something that in the system that I used wasn't not able to really do this, because this is based on a standard manufacturing system that really has all of this all ready for the horticulture industry to use.
Nice.
This is a great example for someone like the tree supplier that Melissa mentioned in the first part of this story. And so we have something that's called overhead by pot size. So this is a really good way for those, for any crop really, but especially for longer duration crops, because what this tool does, you're able to go in there and make groups. Like I got 12-inch allocation. I say it's about $1.20 per pot, and that's for overhead labor. And so that means per unit. So granted, you have to figure these things out, and kind of use your spreadsheet and that to come up with really what your cost per unit is in that. But then once you can put it in this table and then jump to the next one. And then we can actually run this overhead or create overhead labor. And so what this screen does is it pulls in each production order that's in production. So it's work in progress, something that's still in process. So when you say create overhead labor, it's going to pull in all of the production orders that are still in process. And then you can create the overhead labor. And what it's going to do is look at that table to figure out what size it is and what the labor overhead is. And then it's going to apply that to each of the open production orders. So someone like a tree grower, what they do is about once a month, they go and add the labor cost because they figured out about how much they spend, you know, upkeeping the product and that. And these are boxwoods and things like that that could take 5-6 years to grow. So you can imagine it's hard to keep adding cost to that. Well, this is how we do that. We're able to, whether it's once a week or once a month, to mass update labor cost to this. So this has been something that's really popular and manageable.
Yeah, without having to track every activity for every task that you do related to a batch of product.
Exactly. We're kind of spreading it over everything,
Mm-hmm.
which definitely has been something that when we originally started selling was really trying to keep track of it per production order, which is great to have that granular information, but we found it really, really tough to keep up with the data entry.
Totally.
So
And then, yeah, do you want to talk to this one?
No,
Want me to talk?
go ahead.
Okay. Okay. So these are some other, you know, valuations too. And I specifically pulled this one in to say, hey, you know, buy this item, what's my profitability? You know, how am I doing on this item? So they're tools once we, you know, produce, sell, fulfill everything in one system, we can do things like see our profitability down to the item and SKU level. You know, because everything's in one system, also all those transactions, so our inventory valuation matches what we're doing in our general ledger, right? Because we're not just summarizing information, it's all in one system. So specifically for this client, they were saying, I need to identify what my low performing SKUs are. We have the tools in the system, so you can identify what the low performing SKUs are and make sure you've got the proper lineup that you're selling.
Well, can you go back to that screen real quick? You know what, I have to just laugh because what's so amazing is that those two numbers match. You know, the system that I came from and what we hear from so many of our clients is, even if they are using a system and not just spreadsheets, they're like, hey, you can run one report, I get one number, and then I run another one, and it's different. And that was something that we dealt with. And what that does is really, it spreads a lack of confidence in the numbers. So basically, when customer service in my former company, even though the system said what we had, they would still print the order up and highlight these trouble varieties or things they didn't trust, basically go put it in a box of the grower's office, and then throughout the day they'd kind of pull the stack and go through and have to initial it. I'm sure some of you have done things like this. You do whatever you got to do to get it done, right? But you know, when you get in a system that is so integrated, and you know, this is like real world ERP, so there's what, 200 and something thousand companies using this system. Started as an accounting system, so it is very great that all of these numbers match, and be able to look at this information and really look at the value of your product as it's being produced.
Nice.
And
then
down
once
to the
you
SKU
value
level.
your product, right? Like,
Right.
let's make sure we set the right pricing.
Yeah, we always had several different pricing lists. I helped with those because I was the report writer. But yeah, it's really tough because we had a freight pricing spreadsheet. We had the gold key price list, the landscaper price list, all that. And this screenshot here shows the different price lists that we have in Business Central. I have one there that's, you can see there on the left box there, all customers. So that's kind of like my
Retail.
list price, right? Your retail price. And you could make one price list with everything in, but it is much easier to kind of separate it. And then you just add the customers to the different price groups or price lists. So right there, all customers are going to get that price list, and over to the right, you can see the starting and ending date. If you look at my Gold Key 2024, I see I'm going from July 1 to 6/30 of the next year. That's a different pricing year. So if you could have different pricing years for different products. And then I got an IGC boxwood price list, and so on, landscape 2024. And so you can see a couple of those are just in draft, but I can specify when those are going to take place. So go ahead and switch, and you can kind of see what one of them looks like. Very Excel-like. And speaking of Excel, you can just import from Excel or paste right in here. So you can do all of your work and figure this out in Excel, and then very easily get it in the system. But this specific one is a customer price group. of GK, standing for gold key. And so then you just go to the customers and basically say what group they're part of. You can see down there I got a minimum minimum quantity there, so you can build your volume levels. So if you have discounts on volume and things like that, I kept it very simple. And normally I would have to have that hydrangea limelight, maybe 3 lines or something, or however many breaks you have there as far as min max. But you can do everything from early order discounts to volume discounts, and also specify whether or not you can discount the line or not. And then to take it even farther, we also have, this is something SilverLeaf has added for our big box growers. So there's also price lists for the customer UPC and SKU pricing. So we know what price we're selling it to our customers for, right? But this is to print their UPC labels and things like that. So you can see I have the different, on the very left, I have the different customers, and then what my item description is. And then over to the right there, you can see we have the customer SKU, customer UPC, what their description is, and that's what price they're selling it for. So whether it's an IGC or Home Depot, we can print those labels to stick on the pots at whatever part of the process. And SilverLeaf has a integration with Bartender, so all these labels print directly from the system, and you decide whether you want to print it from the order or print it from the load. Or anything like that. So it's really added a lot of great functionality to eliminate all these different spreadsheets.
Nice. All right, I think we've got a bonus discussion topic today. I think we marketed this for 3. We came up with.
We always go above and beyond.
Above and beyond. We try to overachieve where we can. So we're going to talk a little bit about availability. And I'm sure a lot of folks on the phone may be able to relate with this. So this comes from one of our clients before. It was really their issue was letting teams know what needs to be shipped and what's available. And so, they had an availability spreadsheet by week, by species, by genus, and then they had a separate sales order spreadsheet for every week with a pack schedule and bill of lading. And the spreadsheets also generated a number of conversations about what's really ready, what needs to ship. And so when we look at the tradition of how we've managed availability, ultimately, ideally we're looking with technology is to empower your sales team with the knowledge that they need to support those customers. And so in one system, as we see here, we can enter our sales demand and automatically see what's available for that item that we're looking at and when we want to commit it. So Todd, I don't know if you want to explain these.
Yeah, sure. That's the thing. We have so many customers, and me being one of them, we're not a customer, but coming from the industry, we'd send out our availability on Monday at 9 o'clock, right? Monday at 9:05, it was wrong because whatever orders were going in, it's not going to update that spreadsheet. So that disconnect really between production and sales is really the common problem throughout the industry. Is most of the customers come in and they're doing something like that. So very difficult. But if production is in the same system, and granted, like I said, garbage in, garbage out, you have to be posting what you're doing in production and all of that to have this work properly. But we've come up with systems and processes to enable you to be able to keep up with that. And so right when they're putting in these line items, they can see right there the item availability by location, because that those sales lines are for this specific Southwest Delta location. So if you have multiple farms, they would just switch what location they want to pull from, and the availability would update. Go ahead and go forward one. And then if you drill into that availability, then you're going to really see it whole on a grid, like we like to see it. This is another addition SilverLeaf added that has a much better viewable availability for the industry than Business Central had out of the box. And what I really like is that you can filter this on anything. Right now I'm just filtering out annuals. You can filter it on color and different attributes, pull in different locations and things like that, but really see what's going on. And if you look at that top line there, I got like 4,995 or whatever available. Maybe I want to somebody wants 5,500. We don't have it. You go over a couple of weeks, all of a sudden it jumps up to 14,000. And what you can do is you click it to the next slide, and then just like everywhere else in Business Central, you drill for information. So I click on that number, and right away you can see highlighted there, it's showing that there's a production order for 10,000 that's supposed to finish that week. Below that, I can also see how many sales orders are already booked that week against that, okay? And then if I want to drill into that, go ahead and switch. I'll drill into the sales lines. Now you can see which sales orders are booked against that number. So, you know, where I came from, it seems like production spent all their time combing through reports because there was no screen like that just really came up. It had to really run a print to screen report, right? So you'd have to run this report and look at it and then see a negative, and then go all these other places in the system to try to figure out where's the negative come from. Here you can open up our availability matrix. You see a number less than you need, or a negative number, most importantly. You can just click on that number and drill into it and see where's the negatives coming from, what sales orders are booked, what do you call it, fulfillment is coming, or supply, and really get answers rather than, you know, highlighting papers and putting it in a box and calling people and messaging people and everything like that to figure out what's going on. We're really trying to enable just the customer service person to really be able to get answers on their own, in turn getting the customer answers quickly. You know, we used to take a day or two sometimes to be able to tell a customer whether or not we really had something available, and you can really lose customers like that.
Mm-hmm. And I think that rounds out the stories that we wanted to share today. We really appreciate you being here. We've got an upcoming webinar at June 27th, also at noon, a know before you go for Cultivate 2023. I can't believe we're already talking.
I can't believe it's almost June.
I know, that's crazy. So we're gonna have a little fireside chat. Are we gonna have fire? So we hope
we'll have a slide.
That's right. That's right. We'll have that's right. We'll have a fire.
Like the TV station that you can turn on and it's the crackling fire.
That's right. So Mackenzie, I don't know if we've got any questions, if anyone's chatted any in.
Yeah, it looks like we have a couple questions coming in here. So if you have any more, feel free to drop them in the chat, but we'll go ahead and get started with a question from Tom. His question is, how long does a solution like SilverLeaf take to be implemented?
So I would, Todd, do you want me to take that one?
Oh, yeah, that's right up your alley. Go right ahead.
So certainly how long it takes depends on the requirements, depends on the capabilities that a client seeks to set up, and then also the capacity of that client. So, you know, we typically say rule of thumb, like if I had one client with 10 users, so not in one location, one company, one location, 10 users, and we were doing finance and sales and purchasing and inventory and production, you know, I would expect that project will probably take about 6 months. And part of it is that we are reviewing all of your key operational processes and setting that up appropriately in the system and taking time to make sure you understand how you're going to operate for all of these key functions in the new state. So that does typically take about 6 months if we're doing everything.
Okay, great. We have another question from Jennifer. She's wondering, does this type of solution require an internal IT staff?
I can take that one.
All right.
I used to be the internal IT staff, just me, right? Try to take a vacation with that. The beauty of this product is that it's in the cloud. You know, I spent so many years building new servers every 5 years, you know, doing the updates, you know, having to, I mean, even especially when this ransomware thing started coming out, you know, once you're in the Microsoft cloud, really they're fully in charge of, you know, the backup, the security, all of that. Plus it's, you know, they have multiple copies of it. So if it goes down, you really come up, you don't even really realize that you're on it's really co-located in many different areas. So the answer is no. I mean, I would still have maybe a little tech or something to help you when you can't print and things like that, but it really takes that cost. And if you really add the cost of what you're spending on even electricity, having the servers running all the time, all of the maintenance that has to happen, the backups. I used to carry a magazine of tapes in my trunk, so there was one copy of the data that wasn't on the property in that. And so, I mean, the world really has gone cloud, you know, and we have a lot of customers that, you know, kind of like, oh, I don't want my data in the cloud. And it's like, well, do you do online banking? You know, do you buy from Amazon? You know, everybody is already in the cloud. And so really, you can still have a backup copy and all that stuff, you know, in case something happens. So you don't just completely depend on Microsoft. But I would say the need to have really an IT staff lessens very much.
Okay, we have another one from Brian, and he's wondering, how long does it take for our inventory to be loaded into the solution? Is it tracked via Excel now? Or if it is tracked via Excel now, can that be loaded into the software then?
Sure. So that certainly would be part of an implementation, is making sure we've got our master data loaded. So your customers, your vendors, the items that you produce and sell and purchase, chart of accounts, and then the balances we bring in would be, you know, what's inventory on hand by location. So ultimately we give out the templates, and they're commonly in Excel, and you are cleaning the data, and we're pulling that into the system as part of deployment, both to use as testing information, and also when we're ready to go live, we're bringing in clean data for our production database.
Yeah, it's great because we, like she said, we have a test company. So we bring all your data into what we call a pilot company. It's for you to just hack on it and practice, and, you know, it's not real. You know, it's for you to, and you'll continue to have that. It's like, we call it a sandbox. So you're going to have your sandbox to play around with things, try different things where you're not affecting the production data. And so after you go through that process of part of it is testing, but also making sure that the data is clean and all that. So then once you go live, we actually cut over and import all of your clean data in there. But then you continue to have that sandbox to really do training with people and things like that. So it's really, really effective.
Great, thanks, Todd. And one last question from Sarah. For the availability matrix, does that come from the SilverLeaf solution, or is that an add-on?
That is the SilverLeaf solution. You know, Business Central, you know, has fine availability, but it's more vertical, where it will show the weeks, you know, in a column, right? Where, you know, we love to see it pivoted, to see those weeks across the columns in that. And it's calculated. There's, you know, it's a little technical to get into at the moment, but we do have different ways of calculation because we're using a cumulative availability, if you're familiar with that. But we have a couple different options of how you want the availability to actually calculate. So that's all part of the SilverLeaf functionality that really caters to the horticulture industry.
Thanks, Todd.
Great, well, that is all. Again, thanks Todd and Melissa for sharing all that great information, and thank you all for joining. Hope to see you guys at the next webinar in June.
All right.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Take care. Bye.
Bye-bye.